Okay, we have 7 o'clock here. It's time for the Plan Commission meeting for Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. We'll call the meeting to order. Secretary Miller, will you do the roll call?
Yeah, Council President Paschal,
Here.
Anchor,
Here.
Rosendich, here, Johnson, Schmidt. We do have a quorum.
Okay, item 3 is approval of the minutes of the October 19th, 2021 meeting. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve those minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Item number 4 is to identify potential conflicts of interest. You all have the agenda before you. If there's any conflict of interest, let me know now. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, citizen comments. Are there any citizens who wish to? Any? Okay. Please come up to the podium over here and identify yourself by name and address, and we'll know who's speaking. Yes.
My name is Cheryl Isaacson, 2108 North Lincoln.
Okay.
This is about Veterans Parkway Subdivision. I guess we have concerns. The trees were cut down 2 years ago and the mess has been in our backyard for 2 years. The Marshfield Fire Department was called a couple times because of the hazard of a fire with all the brush. As of to this date, nothing has been done. We would like to know how far the duplexes are gonna be from the property lines and the drainage. Like the gutters go in the back of the duplex, so they're gonna be aimed at our property lines. So how is that gonna be remedied? You know, things like that.
Yeah, it's a citizen comment. Section, so they can make comments. We can address them during the discussion item, or we can, really tonight is a concept review. So we're really looking at just in general, and if there's specific concerns or questions that the Plan Commission wants us to address before we bring it back, we can certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Am I supposed to leave?
Well, we can't address it during the citizen comment period. We'll address it during the time period when it comes up on the agenda. Are there any other citizen comment? Anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, a rezoning request by SC Swiderski LLC to rezone a property parcel 250-2603-33-0983 from CMU Community Mixed Use to MR24 multifamily residential for the following legally described area, Lot 4 of Certified Survey Map number 10927, volume 45, page 179, document number 118637, located in the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of section 33, town 26 North Range 3 East, city of Marshfield, Marathon County, Wisconsin, presented by Emmett Minkowski Associates.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Paschal. So the property in question is located on the northeast side of the city. It's approximately 500 feet north of East McMillan and just northeast of Walmart. So the property is owned by SC Swiderski. It's adjacent to their 160 unit development that just finished up this year. This property is likely going to be phase 3 of their other development. So the property is currently zoned CMU Community Mixed Use. It's approximately 3 acres in size, and currently it's vacant. So according to the City of Marshfield 2017 and 2037 comp plan, the future land use for this parcel is high-density residential, which states some ideal land uses as multifamily and institutional residential with an ideal density of 6 or more units per acre. So the proposed MR 24 multifamily residential zoning district is described in chapter 18 as being intended to create, preserve, and enhance areas for multifamily uses in small and mid-sized buildings at higher densities up to approximately 24 units per acre. So currently with the site, access is restricted as the parcel is landlocked, or the only way to access the site would be through the Walmart parking lot or through Swiderski's other parcel. So it's unlikely that any new commercial development would target this site, and it would likely be developed by a neighboring property. So in the future, it's likely that this development project will require a conditional use permit, and any access, lot line, or site concerns can be addressed during that process. But because the future land use is consistent with the proposed zoning district, and the applicant owns a neighboring development, staff is supportive of this map amendment. So with that said, staff's recommendation is to approve the rezoning request by SC Swiderski to rezone a property, parcel 250-2603-330983 from CMU to MR 24 multifamily residential, and direct staff to prepare an ordinance for common council's consideration. Thank you.
We do the public hearing first. Okay, so this requires a public hearing, so we will open a public hearing. Are there anybody from the public who wishes to comment on this? Anyone here from the public who wishes to comment? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. On this matter, yes. Seeing none, that public hearing is closed. Now I'll consider a motion. Okay, we have a motion to approve, Mr. Rosendin. There a second? Second by Mr. Pinker. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carried. Item number 7 is a preliminary plat review request by Tim Vreeland for the Green Acres First Edition subdivision described as all of vacated grassland subdivision, part of Block 4 of Green Acres Estates, all of Outlet 1 of Wood County, certified survey map number 5203, part of Outlet 1 of Wood County, certified survey number 5202, being located in the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter, southeast quarter of the northwest quarter, and northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 16, Town 25, North Range 3, East City of Marshfield, Wood County, Wisconsin. This one's presented by Josh Miller, Development Services Director.
Thank you, and I'm gonna check with the city attorney to see if we can just put a very much simpler, agenda item on there, so you don't have to read all that. Thank you. So this project is a subdivision. As we've talked about, the city is in need of housing. Single-family lots has been our focus lately. We did the city subdivision earlier this year. This would be a nice enhancement to that. This would be a little bit smaller lots in general, more of a 3 units per acre density is what's required by the TIF district. This area, if you look on the map, this is the location for the subdivision. It's comprised of about 20 acres, with both parcels, including the rights of way and some rights of way that have not been dedicated yet. This would be East 21st Street is the main road going east and west. This was really the first addition to Green Acres, which was done back in 2008 and is nearing full build out pretty soon. But this would be a second access point that is definitely needed and desired by the fire department, and also a looping opportunity for the Marshfield utilities for that Green Acres. But it also gives us an opportunity for new residential development. And this is part of the mixed-use TIF district. And as we talked about, I think back in September, and that mixed-use, that TIF district does allow for newly platted residential. It's the only TIF district that really allows for infrastructure focusing on residential. So infrastructure could be partially funded or fully funded by the TIF district. And really that's city's working on how that would all get put together with the development agreement. But right now we're focusing on the actual subdivision itself and whether it's compliant with the comprehensive plan and whether it meets our chapter 19 subdivision ordinance. So the two different zoning districts, the parcel that is north of 21st Street is zoned SR 6 or SR 4, I'm sorry. Really, it has 8,700 square foot minimum lot size, 60-foot minimum lot width, 25-foot front yard, 25-foot rear yard setbacks, 7.5-foot side yard setback. So you can kind of get the idea of where the building would be placed. The south piece of property is zoned TR6, which is really single and two-family residential. That would have similar setbacks, other than the rear yard would be 20 feet instead of 25 feet. The comprehensive plan identifies this area. Do you have a, go to the next? We don't have a comprehensive plan map in this. Identifies this as medium density residential, which this would fit in that category. It's suitable for residential, single family. I think it allows single, two-family, and townhouse development under the comprehensive plan. The proposal is strictly for single family at this time. This would be creating 55 lots in this area. And once you carve out the rights of way, it actually has 3 units per acre in density. The comprehensive plan, really, other than the land use plan, the comprehensive plan really refers to the housing studies when looking at recommendations and whether something should be approved pertaining to housing. So you look at the underlying economic goals of the 2019 housing study, fiscal health for the city through protection and growth of the real estate tax base. The study shows that the loss of housing market share to the surrounding region and a significant daily influx of employees who live elsewhere. Those employees use city streets each day and may take advantage of parks and other amenities also, but are paying their real estate taxes elsewhere. This plan seeks to reverse this trend by attracting housing investment within the city. So obviously, this is a really good step towards that. And then the next one is business and employment growth through the elimination of housing choice impediments. It is understood that housing investments will not drive business and employment growth, but it is also understood that a lack of units desired by employees is a recruitment and retention impediment. And we've heard that from realtors with our economic development board that people can't find housing in the city, and sometimes they're not taking jobs because of that. We've had some people taking jobs in having to move to Stevens Point or other neighboring communities just to find housing that's suitable to work in Marshfield. If we can provide housing for that, why not? So the comprehensive plan, again, this study was done a couple of years ago, and this was prior to our hyperinflation situation that's going on now. Our focus was trying to get housing below 200,000 and then above 250,000. You're simply not going to have housing, single-family housing on their own lots of regular size housing for under 200,000. That price point doesn't exist without some type of pocket neighborhood or some type of smaller home setting. So that range really just doesn't exist. So it's obviously, it really wasn't factored for inflation in the housing study, but we feel like that number is shifting up, and really these would be more, at least a portion of them would be more geared towards starter homes. We're not talking about affordable housing, but it would be more focused towards starter homes. We have a lack of desirable lots, and this would be add 55 lots to our inventory. And historically, we've built on average in the last 10 years about 14 single family homes per year. And so that's still, we did the city subdivision earlier with 23 lots, 14 of which are already pre-sold. So that's already spoken for 14 of those lots. Now, if we have 55 more lots, that adds to our inventory, but that's a short-term solution. But this is not going to be a one and done thing for forever, but and these hopefully will fill up rather quickly. One of the components that we deal with anytime there's a subdivision is we have to look at Parkland dedication and Parkland dedication fees. And the parcel just to the east of the subject property outside of the subdivision, the city owns. And so obviously a Parkland dedication, a land dedication isn't very suitable because we own some of the land. If we wanted a park there, we would just put a park there. So, sir, you can't.
Sir, we have to have the door open.
It's an
open meeting.
And so with that, the Parkland dedication fee is usually, it's a $200 fee per dwelling unit. This was reviewed by the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Committee for this component of it, but also the next part that I'll talk to you about is a potential trail expansion. In the TIF district, in the mixed-use TIF district, we included some revenue or some funding for a trail expansion that would connect the Hume Avenue Trail or the Veterans Parkway Trail kind of through Hume Avenue and then go across 21st Street and then get over eventually to Greasy Park. This is called the Greasy Connector. And this would be along the 21st Street right away. And been working with the developer. They would be willing to dedicate an additional 5 feet on either side of the road to accommodate for a future trail. So that would be, we're not saying that the trail is going to go in right away. We have to make sure that there's enough revenue as part of the increment, but at least we would be able to plan for that eventuality, hopeful eventuality with the new trail, and that matches with our bicycle and pedestrian. So it dovetails in nicely with our plans. And Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Committee, we're very excited about that opportunity. I did talk to the Parks and Recreation Director on the city-owned property, and he is interested in possible a park at a future date, but again, that would remain to be seen. But so that would be a huge enhancement to this neighborhood and this area of the community if that were to develop. Both the trail and the park. You'll notice on this plat that there is not any stormwater pond on it. And that's because this plat was designed with the city managing the stormwater management off-site, and that's allowed by the stormwater ordinance and by the DNR. We would put in a regional pond that would address, there's a pond on the southeast corner of the intersection of Aspen and 21st Street. That pond exists really to treat the stormwater from Green Acres, not first edition, but the Green Acres subdivision. The pond would move south, further to the south, outside of the subdivision, and that would accommodate the stormwater. So that's been partially engineered. I think most of this stuff has kind of been engineered. This is a plat that has been reviewed probably 5 or 6 years ago and never came to conclusion. The density has changed a little bit. Some of the lots have been shifted around to increase the density a bit, but overall this configuration has been reviewed by the Plan Commission before. It just never got finalized with a final plat. The wetlands are shown on the east side of the, just outside the plat. We are doing a delineation so that those would show up. If anything shows up on the plat, we'd be pretty surprised, but we are doing a delineation, so that should be, would be addressed in the final plat, and maybe the lots might have to change a little bit. Delineation, it just wasn't completed in time for this preliminary plat. Looking at the overall subdivision code and ordinance, there's a couple exceptions that would be requested, and really it's a product of the layout. Typically, the maximum block length is 1,500 feet, and the 21st Street to Green Acre Street is 1,550 feet. And the Plan Commission can grant exceptions to the larger blocks. Well, if we were to make it less than 1,500 feet, we'd be cutting into somebody else's yard on the Green Acres. And so it doesn't make sense to have it less than what the 20th Street subdivision or 20th Street block is to the north. And then the other one is usually we have 600 length of block is required, but because of the depth of the property, that's not practical. You'd have the street that goes all the way to the edge of the property line, and you wouldn't be able to develop south of there because the developer wouldn't control that property. That'd be a different piece of property. So those two exceptions were noted in the Plan Commission packet, and makes sense from a practical standpoint. And the other thing that wasn't shown in here, but that was addressed through our development review team and staff meeting, there would be a sanitary easement requested because of the depth of the sanitary needed. In order for it to gravity, it'd have to be very deep. If we could do an easement that crosses lots 10 and 11 in block 6 and lots 4 and 5 in block 8, that sanitary lateral or main could cross through the property and then just continue on. So we wouldn't have to, that would save the city money and save the infrastructure costs by not going a lot deeper to make sure it reaches gravity. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the preliminary plat of the Green Acres Estate's first edition subdivision with the following conditions. The fee in lieu of Parkland dedication of $200 per potential dwelling unit. A total of $11,000 based on the current layout is acceptable. as part of the Parkland Dedication requirement and should be submitted to the city at time of final plat approval. And then exceptions to the maximum block length exceeding 1,500 feet for 21st Street and minimum block length less than 600 feet for Matty Circle and Herkert Drive are approved as presented. And one thing I did want to point out, this is the old Herkert farm, and that was, Gordy Adler had brought that up to our attention and suggested the name for that second route. And that's kind of just kind of a drawback to the history of the area, which is kind of nice. So that was something that, a nice recommendation, and the developer was willing to accommodate. And then
Okay.
public hearing.
Okay, this requires a public hearing, which I will call the public hearing to order. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this matter, the Green Acres subdivision? Anyone who wishes to comment? Third time, anyone wishing to comment? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed, and I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Pinker,
I move to approve.
we have a motion to approve, and a second by Mr. Rosendich. Is there any commentary? Mr. Rosendich.
Could you just give us a real quick breakdown of like, if we approve this now, what's the next? Like, what is next?
Yeah, so the next step, before we get to final plat, the council would have to come up with a development agreement because it's part of a TIF district. There'd be some infrastructure involved on the city's behalf. Just there'd be some investment. But really the next step would be the final plat. And essentially if the city engineer that determines that the final plat is in conformance with preliminary plat, basically it's the same, state law, essentially, you pretty much have to approve it. And they have 36 months from the time of preliminary plat approval to submit that. I anticipate it'll go quicker than that. But then the council would have to approve the final plat at their meeting through resolution.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Pinker?
Josh, could you point out where that stormwater pond is going to be located?
Yeah. So it'll be south. So it'll be south of Herkert Drive, on the east of Aspen, east of Aspen Avenue, south of Herkert Drive. So it's going to be on the city-owned property, away, far enough away from the wetlands, but it'll be on the east side.
Thank you.
And at some point, the city may look to develop part of this, so there could be possible city lots out of this that could be developed.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. We'll move on to item number 8. Concept plan review for proposed changes to the Veterans Parkway subdivision planned unit development, presented by Josh Miller, Development Services Director.
Thank you. So this is the second time we're reviewing this as a concept. Back in August, I believe, the developer Shane Rouge had put together a concept, and that included a hammerhead, basically kind of a cul-de-sac dead-end hammerhead. And that really they were trying to get 2 additional duplexes tucked back in there, and that would have pushed the development closer to the neighboring properties off of Lincoln Avenue. Through some discussion and kind of reconfiguration, obviously, I think we had a good meeting with the neighbors. They've expressed a lot of concerns, and they've been good to work with and communicated well with both the city and the developer about those concerns. And through that, the developer looked at what else could he do to really kind of make this happen and make this work. That little hammerhead extension would be a significant infrastructure cost just to accommodate 2 lots. So his thought process would be, if I shift over, reconfigure the 1 duplex and then shift over another duplex, he'd lose one of the duplex units, but it would keep the remaining duplexes away from those properties kind of on the south edge of the development, east off of Lincoln Avenue. So there'd be a pretty significant buffer. And Ms. Isaacson had brought up the question of how far away are these duplexes from that. They'd be looking just kind of based on the scale, the back end of those duplexes would be probably 170 to 180 feet from that east property line. So a pretty significant buffer. This would be an effort to, you know, obviously make the development more feasible for the developer, but accommodate the, you know, the neighborhood concerns. Obviously, the more buffer you have, the less impact for stormwater. There would still be the two duplexes that would be off of Shortest Drive, you know, coming in from Lincoln Avenue. Those would still be built because there's infrastructure there. Those would be a little, you know, closer to the neighbors. I think we had 10 feet in the original concept. We tried to keep it as far away from that east property line as we could. But that's a side yard, and most minimum side yard setbacks are 7.5 feet. Because it's a planned unit development, the plan commission can establish its own setbacks. You could make it 2 feet if you wanted to, but in reality, you probably would make it a little bit greater to accommodate some of the higher density. So there's a little give and take when there's a PUD. The developer is asking for probably a little bit more in regard to some setback or some density issues. And then the plan commission can demand a little bit more when it comes to, you know, addressing aesthetics or stormwater or landscaping, things like that, that would otherwise not be at your purview. So looking at the plat on the left side, if you're looking at the map, that's really the concept. It is getting a little bit tight up to, you know, the dwelling on lot 15. You know, there's a pretty limited backyard there if you look at that. So it's not ideal. We could try to shift it further away to the south. He's really just hoping to get 3 duplexes out of that. And if he can't, he may revert back to that hammerhead thing because he can get more duplexes, and then it's worth the additional expense for the infrastructure. This concept does accommodate a less impact on the wetlands, and he's had, I think, some impact on some of the wetlands already per some of the neighborhood comments. And the DNR is looking to address some of that already, but he was trying to do some cleanup earlier this summer, and then the DNR put a pause on that because he's got to address his issues with the wetlands before that. You're not supposed to do any clearing and grubbing in the wetlands, even if there's down trees. You can do that on lands that are not wetlands, but once there's wetlands involved, you really aren't supposed to disturb them where they would impact the quality of the wetlands. So he's got to still come up with a plan, but he feels that this would be a reduction in the impact on wetlands overall, just by this configuration. It is tight. You're only getting 10 feet in between buildings. It's usually we have 15 feet at a minimum when you've got 2 7.5 foot side yard setbacks. That ends up being a minimum of 15 feet. 10 feet would be the bare minimum for building code standards for fire separation. So we would probably want to push that out a little bit just to make sure there's enough buffer to ensure that 10 foot is going to be met. But that's a building code standard. And I think even moving them a little bit further south, maybe able to accommodate some additional backyard in that lot 15, and then also get a little bit more separation because that is pretty tight. Based on the configuration, they would be like still single story duplexes based on the floor plan that he sent before. So really at this point, he's just looking for some feedback if the plan commission has concerns. Would this concept be acceptable? I think overall from you know, the neighbor's perspective, this would be a better concept because you are providing more buffer. You're reducing the future maintenance and issues with infrastructure that the city would have to take on with a cul-de-sac or a hammerhead bulb, less, you know, nuisance with plowing and things like that for just, you know, street upkeep and stuff, and probably one less street light. So there are some benefits to doing it this way, and, you know, the density is still there. We're getting the tax base, the dwelling units, and reducing the impact on the wetland. So at this point, really just looking for any feedback that the plan commission might have that we can share with the developer if he's on the right track, or say, you know what, we prefer the hammerhead shape and you know, so. And this is, so in addressing Alderperson Rosenditch's question before, really the next steps would be this, we'd send this back to him. He would go submit it back to the DNR for review to make sure that what he's proposing would still fit with the wetland disturbance. And then he would eventually come back with a concept for general development plan. It's a PUD general development plan for review. And that would be, it's kind of like a rezoning step, but you're looking at the general layout, the general plan, and then there would be a specific implementation. So that would be the following step. So there'd be 2 more reviews with the plan commission at a minimum, once this concept is given the go.
Okay, are there any comments? Questions? I would just say that, I know that the neighbors, both to the north of this and along the east side of this, have great concerns about the lack of development in this location. And I'm glad to see that they're at least making an effort to come up with a workable plan that, will satisfy the DNR and will work with the neighbors to, provide some of that buffer zone between the neighboring properties. I see that their plan is to start some construction in the spring of 2022 if all things go well, which I think, will help, with some of these problems. I do agree that I would like to see maybe those units moved a little bit to the south, those new units proposed moved a little bit to the south in order to provide some additional spacing there, provided that the wetlands can be accommodated.
Question from here.
Mr. Rosenberg.
What, ma'am, the woman that came up earlier about the runoff, what property are you talking about with the runoff from which one of these apartments is it that we're actually talking about? Are we gonna address her question?
And, you know, it's
Or is it
difficult.
all of them? Is that what we're
Well,
all
I think her
worried about?
concern is the neighborhood, because I think she's been the spokesperson for the neighborhood in general, but her property is basically east of 19, lot 19, further to the south, which is wetlands and pretty far away from where this would develop. And some neighbors have expressed concern since some of the land disturbing activities have taken place. They've experienced some flooding issues and some other issues that are bound to happen. And the question with the gutters is, water goes downhill, obviously, and the goal would be to try to grade it so that the water comes back onto the street, gets into the gutters in the street, and then or the inlets in the street, and then get stormwater pond. You can't control all of that, but I mean, there could be some ditching along the property lines or things like that that could help mitigate some of that stormwater that's either going north, east, or
That raises a question then. So if it's all the damage that was done to that wetland area, and obviously water's not running properly now because of what was done, how it's supposed to, can the city get involved at all, like as in public works or the street division, because to help move some of this material around, or is it because it's a wetland, we just kind of have to leave it?
Well, ultimately, as Alderman Paschal had mentioned, I mean, I think he's been stalled a little bit because, the DNR, he was working to clean up some of this. Now, he wouldn't have addressed the drainage, but, anytime you got like a fallen logs and things like that, it all kind of gets blocked up a little bit. And I think he would have done more work this summer. Now, it's been a mess for a few years. I mean, to be quite honest, there's been problems, and we've been hearing complaints about this for some time since it got clear cut a while back. That was not ideal. That wasn't what we wanted to see. The original development had the old wetland delineation on it, which we weren't aware of, and so that was what he was going by when he went to redelineate it. When he was doing the infrastructure, the wetlands had grown quite a bit, and it might have been self-created because he had, taken out some trees that would have uptaken.
So I'm sorry to stop you. I'm actually just trying to figure out, can the city get involved in help move some of the material, or are we in a waiting period because of being a wetland?
Yeah, essentially, I think we are in a waiting period, and at least until he gets the green light. Ultimately, we can, as part of this plan development, because he's looking for approvals and stuff, we can have some additional requirements to address certain things as part of the plan development. So I don't think the city would want to get involved if we can compel him to take care of it.
No, and I understand that, but if we're not seeing water flow out of the area, how we help construct the streets, it seems like we may need to get involved.
Yeah, and I don't think, you know, and this is just my personal opinion, I know Dan Connect was part of that neighborhood meeting, and I don't think he felt there was a need at this point for us to do that. I mean, it's continuing dialogue, but I don't think we can do anything until the DNR gets involved.
And for a little history, I think that the original development was not connected to the city's stormwater system, and the city has gone in and made those connections. So at least the water is set to run
leave
off.
the area.
Yeah, to leave the area.
And I think once the additional street gets in Shortest Drive, everything is supposed to flow to that. I think that'll be a better conveyance of the stormwater getting south to that pond quicker versus going through people's backyard. And so once you get that drainage to go to that street, that should help. And like, again, as was mentioned, having it developed will actually, I think, help the issue, versus what it is right now. You know, again, I'm not a stormwater engineer, but when we do develop this, they'll have a stormwater management plan, as part of that. That should get us the gradients and figure out how that should all be done. Stormwater should go.
Any other comments, Mr. Pinker?
Josh, you just said that the stormwater was directed towards Shortest Drive.
In general, we try to get this, yep.
So if we take a look at our diagram, going at the top, at Shortest Drive,
Mhm.
then we're coming, taking that loop downward, south. So all of your water is gonna be directed on the shortest going up.
No, I don't think it's practical to get all of it, but I think in general, you try to get that water, you try to grade it to go that way. Obviously, there's gonna be some that goes naturally to the east depending on the grade. And obviously wetlands we can't disturb, so there's gonna be some water retention in the wetlands. But for the
Would it be fair to assume that the lot would be sloping gradually towards the north-south portion?
that would be the intent, yeah.
Okay,
And then that was one of the comments that Dan Connect had at the neighborhood meeting, is that's really the goal, is to try to get, really direct as much stormwater as you can to, because the pond is on the south side, and we don't have a good map of the pond, but there is an actual stormwater pond on the south, which would treat this area. It was designed for this whole area. I don't know, and that'll be something that'll have to be revisited when the stormwater, the plans are put together, is how that drainage works and gets to that pond.
okay. And Ms. Isaacson, if I give you this diagram, could you put an X where the area is that you're concerned about? Just so I have that for clarification. Okay, so just put a big X there. Okay, so you're over here. Okay, super. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions or comments? Oh, sure.
Delineation was years. Because they. Why wasn't the delineation?
Yeah, and that's a fair question, and I think at the time, we thought the delineation was current when the plans were submitted. You see a wetland delineation, and we don't always get the documentation for that, and so that was kind of a learning experience on our end. It turns out it wasn't, and I think the wetlands probably may not have been as bad as, or as extensive as they are now had there not been clear cutting. So if he'd have done the delineation ahead of time, it might not have been too much different than what was there 10 years prior. But like you said, with the clear cutting and things that he did, that did impact the wetland.
Yeah, and there were also trees.
Okay, there's no action required this evening on this. And Sorry, I lost mine.
I think on the next time we bring this, it's important that these people be here. I'm not a fan of a letter when we're trying to do this, and it's been a problem for a long time. I mean, I think if it's that point, if it's that situation, then we just gotta move it to the next meeting until they can be here to answer questions.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think, you know, at the concept phase, they're really just looking for some, I mean, we got into more detail here than we normally would on a concept plan, but yeah, I agree, and I think for the preliminary or the general development plan, they just have to be, because we're getting into more detail, but these are questions that,
But they should have been here tonight for this very, I mean, if people hear this is not something we usually have. And I think I hope you voice that to them.
yep, and we invite them and we encourage all of our applicants to show up, and we obviously can't.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just telling you, please repeat that.
Yep.
Okay, item 9 is staff updates. Nothing?
I don't like to say a lot, because then I have to put it in the minutes. Yeah, we have a new city planner that starts on Monday, and they'll be here, at the December meeting. We look forward to being back to fully staffed department. We have. He's ready to have another person on board.
Okay, item 10 is, announce the next meeting date, and items for future agendas.
Yeah, so this is, typically, we like to keep our schedule pretty regular. And in this case, because of the holidays, the council usually moves their meeting up to December, up a week, and that encroaches on the city plan commission's regularly scheduled meeting. What we'd like to do is move this meeting up a week, or so, if possible, to December 15th, which would be a Wednesday. We could set it at any time because there's no conflicting meetings with the city. We just, that helps us, because then those items that get to at the December Plan Commission can be brought forward to council the next week, without having to read them into the minutes, and with giving the council a fair shot at actually reviewing the items, without expecting an approval that night. So it helps us, helps the council, and just wanted to see if anything could be accommodated for the.
Question. Does it look like we're gonna have a full boat for December or?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
3 or 4 items already.
all right. So you're asking to move it from the 21st to 1 week earlier? Because
Preferably the 15th, that would be the Wednesday.
say that'd be a Wednesday because we have council on
Right.
the 14th.
Works for me.
It works for me.
Workable into people's schedules.
15?
15th.
And we could do it at 6 o'clock if that works, then you're a little bit earlier rather than pushing it later.
Let's try to do it at 6 o'clock. I do have another thing scheduled for that evenings.
I mean,
Fine with that.
I think. Okay,
Remember putting out the notice or telling everybody, reminding them there.
and we've got an extra fifth Tuesday in November, so that allows applicants to still have the regular time to get their applications into it. Works. I don't know if we want to make a motion to that effect, or if we just, have an understanding that we'll.
I'll motion to move the meeting to the 15th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, we have a second for Melissa. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Anything else? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Rosendich, second by Alan. We're adjourned.